All right, recording is started. All right, this is Dan Porter, CSS Workforce New York board meeting on October 22nd, 2020. Present, we have quorum with board. We have AJ Kircher, Bill Caudle, Bruce Boughton, Chris Sharkey, Tim Driscoll, Ernie Hartman, Jack Wheeler, James Griffin, Jamie Johnson, Eni Eschbach, Josh Michael, Liz Stamp, Margaret Lawrence, Mike Mishhook, Nancy Kirby, all as board members present. As far as staff and guests, we have Daniel Porter, myself. We have, going down through here, I apologize, Melissa Johnson from the staff, Phyllis Ballier from CSS staff, Rayanne Widmer Mason from staff, Kelly Rasu from ProAction of Steuben and Yates, and Shelley Madden, operator from the workplace. So we have quorum. We've made roll call. Jack, I will hand the meeting to you.
Thank you much. Thanks everyone for being here bright and early and getting quorum. So really appreciate it. So we've done attendance and roll call. As always, if you have an item that personally conflicts with yourself or your organization, please note that in the conflict of interest when the item comes up. And we'll move along right to the meeting minutes of August 27th, which were attached by Melissa.
I'll move that, Jack.
Motion.
Griffin, second, Griffin.
Hartman, Griffin. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So board membership, Dan sent out an email to a few of us if you want to talk about the vacancies that we have.
Yep. So we have we now have two. We have one vacancy, one needed filling. So we need two private sector folks at this point. We are we really need to put a heavy push on filling the both of these slots. And we need a private sector to replace a Chemung County person who wants to step down, and Kim Nagel from the Schuyler Hospital.
I gotta figure out how to.
Who had to leave rather. She is gone. So we're looking for two, both private sector, one from Chemung and one from Schuyler counties. I'm going to, not this week, probably start next week when my calendar kind of lightens up a smidge. I'm going to put a full court press on that. So folks who have connections, I usually start with the economic development folks and look for active businesses out there that kind of have an inkling towards this type of work. Then I'll be hitting the chambers of commerces, and then just kind of going to maybe businesses that we've worked with in the past and kind of working my way down through. But any and all help, assistance, referrals that I can get to help fill these, I would much appreciate it, because we're kind of at a point now with two of them again where we're gonna raise eyebrows, so we need to move fast on these. 6 months kind of being that horizon where we need to have them filled.
Okay, so obviously please be in touch with Dan if you have any thoughts, and we'll sort of go from there. Okay, moving on, September 2020 budget, which was attached.
Actually, I'm not sure that it was, so hold on one moment. I need, whoops. So I'm going to change screens here and put up the Excel document so we can kind of work through that. Because I was doing my thing this morning and don't see where we actually were able to
You're right. Yep.
All right. So this is the working Excel document that we do a lot of tracking in. I've blown it up. You can see that there's lots of other worksheets and stuff attached and tabs along the bottom here that we use. So you're kind of seeing the behind the scenes spreadsheet work that normally is summarized in a nice PDF. So bottom line, represents expenditures through September, end of September, which is 25% of the way through the year. So what we're looking for normally, or what we look at normally, is a couple of different columns. The F column, which is our total accrued expenditures, and the I column, which is total cash accrued. And then we look at these percentages next to it, kind of as our guides. So if we're 25% of the way through the year, we look at row 6, total personnel. We like to see something around that 25% mark to kind of give us a feel like we're on task in terms of our anticipated spending. As you can see, we look a little bit low at 21%. The bulk of those under expenditures really are in this fringe line. And as I mentioned last time, that's really is a timing issue. The end of the year is coming. There'll be the annual 401k contributions. You'll have the HSA contributions fire back up, and other end of the year things, and you'll see this number grow pretty handily. But if we look at the 500 line, which is the salaries, we're 25% expended through 25% of the year. So you can see we're progressing nicely per budget on that. Within the operating expenditures lines, there's a couple of things go down here to the subtotal. It looks like we're projecting for the year to be a little high. We're about 22%. So right now we're a little behind, but if you look over the course of the year, we're probably looking a little bit high. Rent, this will drop here in the near future. We have cleaned out some storage sheds. We'll drop down some of those rental costs. So you'll see our obligations and expenditures drop a little bit. We've been really light and pretty much on task with the utilities. However, it's peak utility season coming up. So we'll see how this plays out. Modest janitorial, professional services. The only real big line expenditures are in dues membership. At this point, we've budgeted to stay members of all the organizations that we've been a member of for the last few years. About 2 years ago, we dropped NAWB, which is the National Association of Workforce Boards, because we weren't getting a lot of value out of them. But other than that, our goal is to stay as members in all the organizations, which for us means our state association, NIATEP, all of the local chambers. We try to be a member of all the chambers in our area, at least the major ones. And then the New York Business Council, because we get some benefits through them. Outreach is light. Supplies, we're still a little bit heavy here. It looks like 70% expended, like we're really high, but remember, some of these expenditures that we had last year are sitting as supplies in our admin office. And so as we transfer them out to the centers, you could actually see time periods in which our supply numbers actually drop. And maybe even, worst case scenario, you might see a month that's a negative. But that's really just accounting magic where it's been moved from our supply line down in here to the one-stop centers. Equipment and maintenance. We do have a little bit of expenditure coming up in the admin office. Our telephone system died. It was pretty old in Corning, and it is past what they call end of life. So we can't even really get a new one. So we're looking at pricing options, and we're likely going to go with a VoIP system. So there could be some one-time purchases. So I'm not sure. We may have to kind of use some of the monies that we have set aside down here in special projects to kind of cover that. But we'll see how it plays out. GMS is online. That's our accounting system, payroll services. So bottom line, total operating expenditures. I'm not unhappy with where we're at in that category as a whole. Looking at the one-stop expenses for the year, we're only projecting out about 41%. Right now, we're looking at about 14%. We've got some expenses which are going to jump in here pretty soon. We've got a couple of leases that you'll see on today's agenda. So we're going to see some increase in costs, specifically in the 709, 710 Montour Falls, because the county's raising our rent down there. You'll also see a lease for the bath facility. The bath lease is taking a market jump up as well. And then we usually, with the bath facility, because of the cost of it, we usually just kind of recognize it as a one-time thing. So you'll see a lump sum of costs go in there. All in all, though, I think we're going to be fine on the one-stop expenses, and we're going to come in pretty handily under budget there, because, well, unless we get a lot of customers flowing into the centers and somehow start churning through paper and things of that nature, and resumes and all sorts of other things, I just don't see a huge crowd of folks coming in. So I think we're going to come in well under overall here. So the game plan will be to any unexpended expenditures or available funds that we free up here in one stops, we'll begin shifting them down into the last section, which is our program expenditures, which is where our direct service, most of our direct service costs are. Youth operator training has not occurred yet, but we've dropped that this year because it's going to be a virtual experience. I really like work experiences. This begins showing everyone how much money the youth program the Emerging Workforce Program is spending on direct wages to our youth participants in their internships. So you can see we've got about $27,000 so far expended in this line. Contracted services is our one-stop operator cost. I have shared the amount, and we're kind of negotiating how much money we're going to need on the last year of the contract. Training OJTs and customized. We've obligated, accrued, all that fun stuff, about 150 out of the 200. A good chunk of that is obligations. That means we have contracts in place on it, but we're waiting to close them out. So this will be an area where we'll continue to target the, $10-ish thousand a month worth of contracts out there. But there's a good probability that by the end of the year, we will be up against, if not maybe nudging over this 200 a smidge. And we're really hoping that in whatever stimulus packages may or may not come out of Washington, the traditional training money. Our top program is traditionally our AMP. As you see it, we had 50. We don't have any expenditures. We are earmarking and moving these funds down to the 585 tuition, the ITA line, for Ernie and his group to expend down there. Supportive services, they're moving along. And mileage, we're not getting a lot of mileage reimbursement. With courses all being online, we're not spending hardly anything there. And tuition, we have already kind of, at least on paper here, on paper, it looks like we're overexpended, $89,000 on an $85,000 budget line. But you have to always remember when you look at things like tuition that we obligate the full cost of training. But for students that file their FAFSA, their financial aid, when their financial aid packages finally come around and they factor in the Pell and the TAP and all that fun stuff, our obligations and our actual expenditures rarely ever hit what we obligate on the front end. So I'm not uncomfortable with appearing to be over right now, because actually that means that the actual reality is we've not spent that much money yet, nor probably will we. But we also have another 50 from TOT that we're putting down into that category as well. So bottom line, we're 25% of the way through the year. If you look at this line here, we have got hardcore expenditures running a little bit behind. The primary drivers of the under expenditure really is the one-stop centers themselves and some timing issues up on the payroll. Look, projecting out over the course of the year, we're looking at about 36%, which is, it's still too early in the year to tell kind of how that big number will show. But I'm not unhappy looking at all the subcategories of how we're progressing. So that's a whole lot of stuff. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Questions for Dan? No, pretty thorough. Looks good to me.
Okay.
Anything further for Dan? Okay, if I could get a motion to accept the September 2020 budget.
I move. Tim Driscoll.
Tim,
Bill Caudle, second.
Bill, second. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The executive committee report from September and the beginning of October.
So executive committee's been meeting, kind of keeping the wheels turning. Again, in September, you'll note here, and I mentioned in the budget that we're kind of negotiating. We have up to $329,000 that may become available this year. In the third and final year of our operator RFP, we're still trying to figure out what they want and what they need. So far through the first 2 years, they're about $48,000 underspent. So I'm not anticipating, and they still are a little light on one of the staff. So I'm not expecting to obligate all 329 this year. So I think that's going to free up some funds down in that program expenditure area, and funds that become free when we get down to the final number there. We may have to look, depending on how much they are, if we want to strategize about where we want to move them in the budget, or if there are other things that we want to use those dollars for. But my expectation is that we're going to get a lump of money kind of de-obligated when we close that out. That was the September 3rd meeting. It was really a one-item meeting. And then in October, we talked a little bit about the budget, so you can kind of see the conversations that group was doing. a lot of what I just shared in terms of the training and the moving of the AMP and all that fun stuff was really vetted out heavily in exec. And they added a couple of ETPL updates, particularly from Corning Community College on theirs, and then some business services, but we'll talk some more about that. So that's what exec has been up to. I don't know, Jack, if you want to add any additional from, you're kind of chair of that group, things I missed.
Not particularly. I think you covered it. Anyone else from the executive committee, anything to highlight in our discussion?
Looks good, Jack.
Okay. If there's nothing further, could I get a motion to accept the September and October executive committee report?
Griffin, so move.
Mishuk, second.
Motion and second. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Operations and oversight, Dan.
So Judy wasn't able to join today. She had some last minute stuff. She thought she could be here and then had to slide out. So operations and oversight has been very, very busy. We picked up a couple of new members in the group. Bruce Boughton and Margaret Lawrence are joining that group as well. So that group is well staffed at this point. They are taking on the operator RFP. So we're beginning to go down that road of crafting up that language. So we will probably have some conversations, very broad stroke, as the O&O teams kind of work through that process to get a feel from the full board of the types of services that we really vision in the career centers. So as our contracts are 3-year contracts, and we've got we're partway into that last year of our current 3rd year. Really what you're looking at and really what we're beginning to ponder is what do we want our workforce career centers to look like 3.5 or 4 years down the road? Where's the goal? How are we going to line up the resources, the staffing, the service structure? And so that's a lot of the conversation that's going to be going on in these first few months around that RFP. That is a heavy load, and I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. We will probably, when Judy's here, she will probably bounce out over the next board meeting or two to kind of get some thoughts about overall structure and things that need to be put into that RFP from the broader board. She may even convene some additional, meetings or conversations. I'm not sure yet. I don't want to speak for her, but that's really the heavy lift right now or one of the heavy lifts that group is taking on. Career centers openings, we have been moving diligently to kind of begin, although we're now tapping the brakes a smidge. So current status on our career centers is that the Elmira Center has been open for appointment for quite some time. We have not advertised, but we've taken a few walk-ins here and there just to kind of let staff take some time to get used to how to do it. But we didn't rush into kind of telling the whole world to come walk in while we were learning. And now that we've got a little bit of a yellow-orange scenario going on down there, we may need to revisit the walk-in capacity. So that's what's going on kind of in Elmira. Montour Falls has opened also with walk-ins. We've not advertised at any of the walk-ins in any of our centers, but Montour Falls has been open by appointment and some level of walk-ins as well. Bath, same thing. Hornell continues, the center itself continues not to be open, but we have the city and the chamber and the IDA have helped us get a footprint, a boot on the ground, if you will, with you using the public library infrastructure. That's kind of how we're accommodating that in person for those customers that really need that. So that's our career center opening. And I will tell you that probably the biggest, most engaging part of the operation and oversight meetings have for quite some time been around the youth program, the emerging workforce. And so you can see in their minutes some of the goals and work that they're doing on the youth program. I do want to commend that group. You've done an exceptional job on providing some oversight and structure for the youth program. The other thing they're looking for is trying to figure out if we can broaden and deepen some of our services to folks with disabilities. We do although our centers are not open a whole bunch at the moment, we do have brand spanking new ADA computers functioning in all of our centers. Our website is up to date and is now ADA compliant. Still not beautiful necessarily, but it's compliant, and we're working to improve that still. And there's operator reports, which I'm going to let Shelley do in a moment around operator. So that is what operations and oversight has been up to.
Dan, this
Okay.
is Jeannie.
Yep.
I just wanted to give the board an update as we know it as of this moment, which about the Elmira Center.
Yep.
Even though we are in the orange zone, we are remaining open for business operations. Classes will be moving fully online, but we are still open. And I think the way that CSS Workforce and the Career Center have been operating is perfectly okay, by appointment only. There's been no density. The rules say no more than 10, but you haven't been doing that anyway.
Correct.
So,
Yep.
so I think we're fine to keep operating as you have been.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, our density has been, we've got very strict rules on the number of customers in there, and between appointments and walk-ins, we've been working very hard to keep that density low. So good. I'm glad it's working. That's all we have for operations, Jack, unless there's other members from the operations and oversight. Bruce, you're on that group. Amy, AJ, anyone else have anything that I missed? Bill?
No, I don't think so. I think you did a great job, and I would make the motion to accept.
Motion from Bill. Do we have a second?
Jeannie will second.
Okay, Jeannie will second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Nothing, no actions from the Personnel Committee, but Dan, you want to discuss the 2020 health insurance plan?
Yep. So Personnel Committee, we kind of dropped our attendance, and we were midway through some stuff and then sort of fell by the wayside. So we do need to refire our Personnel Committee. We do specifically, I need to look at, with New York State's new sick leave law, we need to update our sick leave policy. So I do need to refire up, and we're probably going to be looking for another body or two to help support that effort. But one of the things we have to do pressing right now is the health insurance plan design. So this is a summary sheet. So the top here represents our actual agency costs for this year that ended in, well, it's ending in December. So our total cost for everything for all of our health insurance plans is around 91.5. The gold 6 with HSA option basically is dead. Excelis is shedding that. The closest replacement, approximating kind of our basic structure, is what they call. Actually, I take that back. The gold 6 as it was written is being changed. I'm sorry, my apologies. They are keeping it, but they are increasing the deductibles, increasing the copays, etc. To be more in line with where they're going as a company. So if we kept the same basic plan, our costs would be basically the same, 91.8 versus 91.5. So if we were to shift and stay with the same plan and same program design, the premium costs and overall costs are, for all intents and purposes, identical. The difference will be the reason there's no real increase is because again, the deductibles and the co-sharing and stuff like that are increasing, pushing some of that burden onto participants in the plans. I did ask for a couple of other options out there to see what Excelis might offer. There is this Gold 17 hybrid plan and a couple different variations on that. We could drop our costs significantly with this plan. However, the co-pays, the health savings account availability, it would require a complete overhaul in the design of our health insurance. At this point, well, the other option would be to abandon kind of that high deductible plan and move into, whoops. Oh, there's a, make sure, there we go. I clicked and dragged on accident and I lost it. The other would be to abandon the high deductible structure and go with a more traditional, $15 office visits and copay structure. If we went with that, the cost would be a smidge higher than what we're projecting to pay this year, but not unrealistic in terms of increases. I will tell you, when we put the budget together, I budgeted and set aside money in the fringe line for up to a 15% health insurance cost increase. So any of these plans would certainly fit within that category. In looking at things going to, I don't think this, in chatting a little bit offline with staff about how they're using the insurances and stuff, I don't think there's any real need to abandon a high deductible with a health savings account. I think we've run that basic plan design for enough years that all the staff are comfortable and know how to utilize that. The hybrid plan, while it saves us a good chunk of money, it really, really lowers the quality of health insurance available to the team. Obviously, as a member of that team, you know, I'm not really supportive of that, and I'm not sure that from a budget perspective we need to go there yet. But that certainly would be an option that the board could look at. And I guess lastly, my thought would be is, even though that the annual deductibles increase, the co-pays increase 15 to 20%, some of the lifetime stuff adjusts upward as well. I think looking at our staff as a whole, how they're using health insurance and how familiar they are with the basic structure design of a health savings account, backing up a high deductible. My thought and recommendation would be to stick with the gold 6 for another year, and move forward on that. So that's a whole lot of information, and you can kind of see how the numbers play out. But questions, comments, nervousness, angst, anxiety. We did shop around last year around Excelis. We are using the Dunn Group. They are providing our insurance. It's Excelis. Because of our agency size, we did shop. Jim Griffin introduced us to his insurance supplier out on the western side of our area. And because of our agency size, it's kind of a fixed rate. If you buy Excelis insurance, you're going to pay the same price no matter what. So unless we switch from Excelis to a different, and Excelis is probably the better one in the area right now in terms of coverage and provider mapping and stuff. But unless we switch from Excelis, our costs are going to be the same no matter which company we buy from. But I do kind of need to know from the board is, you know, is it okay to stick with, you know, the gold 6 for another year and realize a little additional cost, about $300 a year, or do we want to look at, you know, taking a big savings and shifting to this plan here? And if we're going to make that shift, then my thought would be that I want to kind of dig that in and provide some more information on what that would mean.
Dan, this is Jeannie, and I've served on the personnel committee, and I mean, we've had lots of discussions over the past years about the fact that, you know, I think we've been very fortunate to maintain the staffing that you've maintained. And part of that is being able to get better benefit package, because as we know, our salaries on the nonprofit sectors are not always as competitive as they are in the private sectors. For that small amount, you know, the $300 approximate increase, I think it's worth it to stay with that plan for another year. And then, you know, maybe, like you said, re-engage the personnel committee and really look at where we want to go for next year. So I don't know if you need a motion or if you want more discussion before that.
Well, ultimately, I'm going to need some sort of, I'm requesting some sort of an official, you know, confirmation from the board that I can go ahead and commit to this, just in case my friends at the Department of Labor come back and say, did I get board approval to spend money on health insurance?
Does anyone have any other thoughts? I would, personal opinion, echo what Jeannie said is, you know, for the nominal increase, and especially if staff, you know, are comfortable with the high deductible HSA, that certainly would be the way that I would recommend going.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And with a high deductible structure, it encourages some consumerism on the person utilizing, you know, the covered employee and their family as well. So I think it's a good, I think it makes sense to stick with that.
All right. Then, so you want a motion, Dan, to ratify or to
Just- Yeah,
approve?
approve the renewing of the Gold 6 with the amended adjustments that Excellus provides or requires.
I'll move it, Hartman.
And this is Jeannie, I'll second.
Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Move on to the other committees and task forces. Let's start with ITA review.
Ernie, just tell me when you want me to scroll down on this. Otherwise, I have it up on the screen.
Okay, well, thanks, Dan. In the first graph there, as you can see, in July, we were still like in the throes of the pandemic. So, participation was down, but as things eased up, and I think the $600 UI supplement went away, we got a bump in August and September. And it's been rolling along pretty well. Now in the pie chart reflects our July 1 to October 14th. And as you can see in the pie chart, historically we've always had medical coders and welding and nursing has always been a big part of what we do. But big thing now is barbering, and it doesn't do me any good at all. So, Jack, you feel my pain, right?
I know it. I do know it.
How
In
many
fact,
more barbers do we need? How many more barbers do we need?
Must
Come
be
on.
there's a big need for it, Griff, because that's the majority of the requests we've been getting. So, in fact, we've got another one right after this meeting to look at.
So going to Jim's question a little bit more depth. So we historically had never really had barbering and cosmetology on our demand occupation list in terms of a fundable training. A couple of years ago, we opened it up because we were hearing for need. We are getting a very large volume, and they're not inexpensive types of trainings that we're paying for there.
That's $7,000.
Yeah, $7,000 a pop. So this may be an area that I don't know if you want me to put it on the executive committee or agenda, we can really hammer through and I can get some more data and we can consider that specifically, Jim. But that's an area where we're putting a lot of money into barbering and not that I have, I use a barber, not as often as I should probably, but I think there's good careers. I think there can be some money there, but I'm just wondering how much money on a limited budget that we have do we want to put into this particular sector going forward? I think it's worth a conversation, and I guess I would open it up, Ernie, if you've got time in your presentation. Does anyone have any thoughts on it, or do you want to put it on the exec or consider it?
Absolutely, I think that conversation needs to be had.
I'd like to see a follow.
Because we're out talking with businesses. We're hearing a lot of needs for a lot of skills. Barbering and cosmetology is not one of them. So I would fully support a conversation about limiting the amount of funds we put into those types of careers. I don't think that at this point in time, considering where we're at, we need to be training more barbers and cosmetologists.
I'd also like to see a follow-up as to how many of these are going on to unsubsidized employment. That's the name of the game, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the flip side, this is Jeannie. On the flip side, I would like to thank the committee for supporting the mechanical tech folks. Those were all folks who had completed their first year at Corning under the Corning Inc.'s program, and Corning Inc. had to cut it last spring. So these were students who were going to be halfway through a program and not be able to really finish. So I do want to thank the committee for supporting those folks who are going through that. We know there are good jobs at the end of this, and I really appreciate the committee being able to support them to continue.
That's the programs we want.
Yeah, that's you know, in my opinion, I think the mechanical tech and should be the barbering piece of the pie instead of the other way around.
I agree with you, Ernie.
So hearing that, I guess I'll make sure that it's an agenda item on our executive committee meeting, next one. Jack, if it's okay with you, what my thought would be that maybe when we do quorum calls or reminders of the exec committee, I'll kind of share it with the full board in case other board members want to jump on to kind of weigh in on this particular topic.
Yeah, absolutely. More voices, the better.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt your presentation, Ernie, please.
Not a problem. I mean, you know, and I'm curious, you know, can we put a ceiling on the amount of funds available for an ETPL or?
So we have the tiered structure. So we've got obviously careers, you know, kind of tiered level 1, level 2, level 3, depending on how long duration and stuff. So we certainly have that built in there. We could look at additional policy, but it really would be more board would set a budget for that kind of broad stroke. We have that ability. We'll just have to word it very carefully is all.
Right.
But,
So Dan, this is Chris. Just a question. I mean, if I'm assuming that using a lot of the funds for barbers and cosmetologists, cosmetology training is limiting investment in other more needed areas. Is that right? I mean, there's not a limitless amount of money in this line item.
in the past, it was really, and one of the reasons that we put it on there a couple of years back was because we did have lots and lots of money available. So I don't, back in the day, it wasn't a zero-sum game. We were trying to broaden it out and increase the variety and trying to get more people into training and support, kind of a broader effort. Currently, and up until now, it hasn't. I mean, we've basically funded, Ernie's team has funded everyone who's eligible and suitable and stuff, and they've done their work well. Where we will feel the pinch is down the road as additional cohorts and different training opportunities come up in this field. If we continue to see the demand for these particular trainings, then yes, you could feel a pinch where, you know, somebody who went to there might be, I know this sounds terrible, but it might be bumping someone out of a different type of career, such as a mechanical tech or a welder or a, you know, heavy equipment operator or some of those things. So heretofore, no, it hasn't bumped anybody out effectively. Moving forward, as our budget gets tighter, you could see that, yes.
Yeah, and for the newer board members, you know, those of us who have been on for at least a number of years, you know, we were trying like heck to spend the training money, and so any sort of training, education, support that we could provide for any jobs was, you know, the goal. But I completely agree with the discussion that in the times that we're in, you know, we have to be a little more judicious in terms of investment, because, you know, there will be limitations where before it was just, you know, make sure we get the money out the door and provide as much training as we possibly can.
Right.
And do keep in mind that the applicant does have a substantial has substantial skin in the game. Phyllis, if you have the information, what's the applicant's burden on paying for tuition? Because the $7,000 doesn't cover the whole tuition. It's quite a bit more than that.
Yeah. So I put up on the screen, Ernie, because we do need to kind of reconfirm some ETPL stuff. So where the bulk of these folks are going, there's a $100 application fee. The tuition itself is $7,500, plus you got to buy additional equipment. So the total is about $8,400 for this. Now, so out of the maximum that we would contribute would be $7,000 of the $7,500, and on the equipment, boy, I don't remember, Phil. Is it? I want to say it might be like 50 or something like that on that front. So,
right. There are, with cosmetology and with the cosmetology, that's the $9,900 course, and we pay $7,000. So the participants have to come up with the other 29, plus the kit is about $900.
So I'm trying to find that one. I apologize. So it's interesting that you say that. Oh, that's books for.
Yeah.
That's the
Right
books
there.
for it. Yeah.
Cosmetology. Yep.
So Dan, this is Jamie. I mean, would it make sense, and as a board, do we have the authority to place a moratorium on funding any more of these until the executive committee has the opportunity to really dig into it and make a decision?
You can certainly do that with a motion. The only thing you've got is you've got literally somebody looking to be presented. Is it today, Ernie, Phyllis?
Yeah, it'll be right after this meeting, so I don't think that the moratorium should be able to affect that because it's already in the pipeline.
Yeah, I would be fine with that, but I think, you know, if we've seen a run of these, you know, it might be in the best interest to just pump the brakes a little bit and slow down and, you know, place some sort of, like I said, moratorium or restriction on future applications until, you know, organizationally we have a little bit of a better handle on this.
And this is Jeannie again, and I would just add that I don't remember who mentioned it earlier about their job placement. It might have been Mr. Griffin, but I think one of the things we need to be really concerned about is, you know, Chemung County just went back into the orange zone and they're looking at closing salons again with that. So, you know, is there even going to be a spot for these folks to do their on-the-job training and practicum sites? And I don't know how that affects their actual schooling. So this school is in the orange zone in Chemung County, and I would think, you know, based on what we're seeing as a school, that they're going to have to go first virtual. I don't know how they can do that. So I guess, you know, I would have some questions there too. And I think, you know, I get the one for today, but then I think there's multiple reasons to put them on hold for right now.
I agree, Jeannie.
I would make a motion that after today's is reviewed, that we place a moratorium on future applications for these types of positions, specifically cosmetologists, hairdressers, and barbers, until we have an opportunity to assess our funding levels and the demand occupations that we want to invest in.
Second motion.
Okay, we have a motion and second on that. Are there any questions or thoughts? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay, anything else on ITA, Ernie?
No, just that last graph, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just a note on the youth that you see that there's no supported services shown in the youth column. That's because that funding doesn't go through ITA.
Okay.
Thanks, Jack.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good job. All right. We talked last month about a lot of the I-86 work kind of being on hold due to the change of our landscape. Is there anything you want to mention, Jamie?
The only thing I'll add is that since the last meeting, Chris and myself and Susan Payne at Three Rivers have met with Dan, and we, you know, began talking about, you know, where things are as far as the landscape around workforce development. And we are, as of this morning, and Dan, I saw your email back to Susan, you know, we're going to be discussing in conjunction with CSS Workforce, pulling together, you know, the partners again to start talking about where the barriers and hurdles are and how as a group we can collectively try to work to get, I use Dan's analogy, to get the cogs of the machine aligned again. So there'll be more to come on that, but I did want to hear that you know, there have been discussions and efforts to get discussions moving. So Chris, I don't know if there's anything you want to add or Dan, but you know, that's the latest.
Just don't forget Hornell is on I-86.
Mm-hmm.
Hornell, where's Hornell, Jim?
So
No, that's good. Okay, much appreciated. and we'll move on. Operator report, Dan.
So I will say, first and foremost, welcome Shelly Madden. Some of you will remember Shelly from she's been in and out of the system for a couple years now. So welcome back, Shelly.
Is there a limit on how many times you can be recycled?
Dan's done it, so no.
Yeah.
No.
So
It's that bad penny showing up.
so I got two handouts for you, Shelly. I have both the one that kind of starts like this and this one. Which would you like me to start with?
That one is fine, Dan.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to, Dan had made mention. So in the career centers, we're having some slow reopening. As he mentioned, we do have some walk-in traffic in Elmira and Montour and Bath. We're averaging probably a couple people a week in Montour and maybe about 3-4 in Elmira. So it has been slow. They are still available by appointments. So doing what we can to help where we can in this slow reboot, if you will. However, even though we're slow to physically be meeting, face-to-face with customers, they are still providing virtual activities and meeting with customers virtually. I did do just kind of a breakout and, I'm just getting acclimated with the staff. So we got together to talk about what this first quarter has looked like for them, being this virtual world. So it's been kind of a eye-opening experience coming in and not seeing people in the center and seeing the center so, barren. But they have provided over this quarter, 166 provided services to 166 customers. About 700 activities. So they're continuing to maintain contact virtually and document in the one-stop operating system the activities that they are taking. So that's just been broken out for you by month for July, August, and September. We do have customers that are attending virtual workshops. 33 total for the quarter. We have taken a step back, working with a workshop committee to take a look at the workshops, and we're going to start targeting the ones that are more heavily attended, and then make a progression from there so that we can have more people engage in the trainings. Also, we have some virtual Meet the Employer sessions. So we're going to continue with those and try to get people to engage virtually. We will continue to meet as a staff weekly to see what we need to do to try to engage people, especially if we're putting the brakes on again just a bit. And then, Dan, the other report there. So those of you who know me probably already know that this isn't my graphic. My supervisor Nestor shared this with me. So kind of in line with what I've just been saying, if you look at the enrollments for adults and dislocated workers, the enrollments are fewer in this quarter in comparison to the quarter for PY19 and PY18. Again, fewer people in the centers, and trying to engage people virtually has been challenging, to say the least. And as you move down, you see that the activities breakout of the adult and dislocated worker activities. So the services are still increasing or continue to be maintained during the quarter, but they're being done on a virtual level. And there's a kind of a breakout of those services, you know, initial assessments, any career guidance, customized training. The workplace staff did, in the month of August, do 60 customized trainings. Worked with the business services team to put those services through. So, you know, they've been working diligently with that. On the job training has also been, they've been continuing with the OJTs as well. We had last month 5 approved ITAs. Those were in the area of, I think we had a welding, nursing. There might have been 1 cosmetology in that group. So we will continue to work with individuals interested in training. I do know that the counselor in Elmira has said that she had 8 inquiries last for training, sent out 8. So I think people are starting to, you know, we mentioned with the unemployment, as it looks like there may not be an extension. I don't know what's going to happen, but those individuals are worried about not being able to go back to their previous employment. So I think we'll be having more and more of the inquiries for training. And then, oh, sorry about that. Just a few, I did have one really bright spot here to share. Carol in the Elmira office, she had a participant who completed her nursing training, and we got information from her. She's been employed at the Chemung County Nursing Facility. She completed her LPN training. And I just wanted to take a moment. So she did send Carol a letter. And it said, "My name is Christy. I received a grant to attend GSD BOCES for their practical nursing program. I graduated from that program on June 26, 2020. Prior to this opportunity, I was working seasonally as a tax advisor for TurboTax and doing my best to make ends meet for the other 8 months of the year. Because I already held a degree, I didn't qualify for any financial aid or Pell Grants to attend school, so any further education I would have had to pay for completely out of my pocket. I'm a single mother. I own a home in Elmira on the south side, and I knew I absolutely wanted a job, but I had no way of attempting this career change until I learned of this funding for training. Receiving that grant money was the best thing that could have happened to me. I consider myself infinitely fortunate to have had Carol fighting for my success the entire way. It was difficult, and I probably worked harder than I ever have at anything before in my life, but I made it through the program with an Academic Excellence Award. After graduation, my studying didn't stop because I had to take my NICLEX examination to receive my LPN license. I just found out recently that I have passed this exam, and all I'm waiting on now is my license to make it official. I obtained a job right out of graduation at Chemung County Nursing Facility with fair pay, hours, and affordable health insurance. My life right now is in a great place with financial stability and an excellent in-demand career, and I owe it all to the Career Center and the training dollars I received. Without it, I would have never been able to attend this program. I'm not sure where my life would be. These funds make a difference in the lives of real hardworking individuals in our community. And for most, it is our last opportunity to afford a training program. I appreciate you taking the time to read my story." So I think, you know, what a wonderful testament to, you know, the training dollars. As I said, sometimes I think in these times right now, we're so focused on the barriers. And here's living proof that some people can rise above those barriers with some, you know, assistance and support.
That story needs to be on our website and on Facebook and everybody
Yep,
should put it.
She just sent it this week. I thought perfect timing.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I agree.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, and then other than that, I continue to, as I mentioned, get acclimated to the new virtual world. I too am looking forward to the talks Dan mentioned about, MOUs and service delivery and how that's going to look moving forward. Continue to evaluate the workshops and all the other virtual services that we're providing to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the job seeker and the businesses as well.
All right. The other thing I would say, just that you went on your thing on the bottom on the screen, total dislocated worker service September. I want to welcome back. You see Anders Korn. The Department of Labor has started getting some of their folks back engaged in something besides processing UI claims. So we're beginning to see the Anders Korns and the Gary Hogates in terms of service delivery staff. You're starting to see some, on a very, very limited basis, Department of Labor staff re-engage on that front, and that's a welcome sight. So that will be good for our system, getting that team back engaged. So other than that, I didn't have anything. Good job on your report.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Shelley. Any questions for Shelley? Thank you very much. Great report. All right, Dan, your show.
All right, so director report, a couple of things. We do have some ETPLs, all on the cosmetology and barbering front. We do need, I have kind of preliminary, keep the gears moving. I did approve some of these changes for considerations. I'm circling them back to the group just to kind of let you know what we did. For the dates of the courses, which was the primary changes, you can see here there's dates and things like that. I'm trying to find the location on here. Hold on. Yeah, so you see like expiration dates and down here these pending dates of when the service delivery and stuff like that is. Every time those dates change, we need to do these. The prices have not changed or anything of that nature. It's really on these. So I do need to kind of, just because we have people in some of these courses already, we do need to reconfirm that it's, that we can add these different two barbering and two cosmetologies to our demand occupation list. This will in no way affect the moratorium. This is really the just saying that should we put somebody into these trainings, or as we have put people into these trainings, that we concur with the dates and we understand it as a board. This will not in any way negate or even impact the intent of the board to put a moratorium on there. But I do need the board to kind of acknowledge that we do have these others out there. We have some people in there, and those expenditures previously agreed to are going to be allowable. And they're out there. Really, this is the meat of it. Most of you probably don't see this because a lot of exec handles this. But whenever this is a New York State list, this is where everybody has to go on the eligible training provider list. For people such as BOCES and Corning Community College, this thing is the bane of their existence. But they have to go in and make these changes. It just talks about course content. This is what a job seeker, if they're looking for training eligibility across New York State, this is where they would go to find out core information about content, costs, dates that it was running, and things of that nature. So we've had to approve these from a staff level to kind of keep things moving in the past. Yeah, I don't know how else to phrase that other than approving these would in no way affect the moratorium decision that the board took earlier. It really would protect us just from people that we've already got in the program. If the board didn't accept these, then we could be in a situation where potentially some of those costs wouldn't be able to be paid out.
Motion to accept your recommendation.
Jim, motion.
Second, Tim.
Tim, second. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That was a very uncomfortable one. Thank you. I wasn't expecting the moratorium vote, so wasn't quite prepared. So moving. Why is that? There we go. This is our business services report. A lot of you have seen these. This is just the latest update. We continue to write a fair number of OJT contracts across the area. We are getting more DWs, which is a good thing. You can see most of them are going into manufacturing across the area. We did pick up some really cool ones, kind of this pre-apprenticeship model with John Mills Electric, which I'm pretty excited about. Thank you, Ernie, for that referral. And then we've got a couple out here actually in the timber industry and stuff. They're doing a big hiring push right now too. So we're getting a fair number of folks in there. So bottom line, we're writing quite a few OJTs, which I'm happy about. On the customized training front, we're 3 months in. So these are the ones that we've just initiated this year. You can see we're getting everything from food service to Autodesk. Yeah, I'm not sure what acidified means. Some CVD trainings, Cove Stone management systems. That's a big one with ID Booth. We did a special dispensation on that. Automated DMSs, engineering. So we're getting a good cross section. To date, we've put about $100,000 worth of contracts out there. In a perfect world, I would tell you that we've spent $100,000, but for some of these trainings, if some of the workers don't attend all of the sessions or whatever, then we have to prorate. So while we've committed about $100,000 in these two streams, new monies this year, we probably will end up paying out, if I had to guesstimate, probably in the neighborhood of maybe $90,000. So that's the business services report. Other than what I would say on the business services side of the house is that that team has been very active, and they are going to begin, they're kind of changing some of the ways they're collecting data. So we'll be able to start and sort and sift out and show you some of our contacts by employer size and sectors. So we'll begin generating some content, some data content for you to look at, so you can see kind of where we're doing as a board. Part of the reason we're doing this as a team is because as a board, you may want to say, ask us to target certain either business sizes or industry sectors, or you may want to just kind of keep your thumb on certain sectors. And so we want to be able to better give you an idea of what's going on. So watch for that. Knock on wood, we'll have some early, maybe snippets of some of that new data at the December board meeting. So if we could get an acceptance of this as a report on the monies that contracts that we've initiated, just so the board is aware of them, it would be very helpful for us.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, this one.
This is Jeannie. I'd make that motion.
I'll
This
second.
is Bruce's. Okay. Motion second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
So here's a fun one for those of you that are really excited in the minutia of WIOA world. Every year we are required to quote unquote negotiate our performance outcomes. So if you remember, I give you those long, they're like 20 some pages long quarterly performance numbers with all the different areas. So we've kind of just finished up negotiating, and I use that term fairly loosely, with the Department of Labor on what those performance measures are going to be in the year that we're in now, and then also for 2021. What I will tell you is this is going to be an interesting year for us. A, because COVID has really kind of buggered up things. But secondly, there were some changes. So U.S. Department of Labor negotiates with New York State Department of Labor for statewide measures, and then normally the state then negotiates with each of the local workforce boards and does some mathematical computations and whatnot for weighted shares and so on. In all of my years going back to WIA in the late 90s, I've never had a scenario where the feds have negotiated multiple years worth of performance outcomes simultaneously. For some reason this year, they opted to do so. So New York's, all the states for that matter, but in our case, New York, had already negotiated 2 years of performance measures with the feds when they kind of began the conversation with us. They began that conversation with us in the middle, actually the end, I should say, or middle at this point. Actually, it keeps going on, but of the COVID craziness. So all of our data sets have been shut down. So things like management reports and all those things that we would normally use as data tools to kind of guide the system and track and manage our performance and things like that, we've been completely blind. We still are blind. We don't have access to that stuff. So we were trying to negotiate performance measures without any data available to us, which is an odd place to be, and do it for multiple years in the middle of a pandemic. So bottom line, the state let out across the different things with their proposal. As you, whoops, in this first column, they threw theirs out there. This is the year we're in now. They're upside down right now. I apologize for that. And then we sort of counter offered. Bottom line, the strategy here was on the baseline things. These are baseline. So in other words, we were just been collecting data up into this point. So the starting point with DOL was their baseline proposal. Really, nobody in the state is going to negotiate on that. The state has basically drew a hard line in the sand and said, for anything that was baseline, you're going to take what we want, and that's it. So all we could negotiate were these things like entered employment rates, median earnings, and credential. Well, actually, credential, those are in there, but really around employment and median earnings. So the strategy that we kind of took locally in terms of the state was knowing what the federal requirements were for the state. We basically negotiated, yeah, we'll accept because we have to accept the things that were in baseline, the things that were not in baseline. We don't want an increase over PY19, so that last year's performance, and actually we tried to get a smidge below in the case in cases where we could. So the overall strategy was successful. So instead of 74.5% on unemployment, our entered employment second quarter, we proposed 69, and they accepted our 69. So all of the things that we proposed were at or below previous years, being PY19, and the state has accepted it, which is a good thing. So really our tack now is to look at what we're doing and how we're doing the data and how to come up with a good plan to meet performance measures moving forward. I will tell you, just looking at things like employment rate, entered employment rates, second and fourth quarter after exit. Realistically, the law of large numbers applies here. So all those folks that are out there that are collecting unemployment are going to get dumped into the. And the sad reality is we really have to count on our Department of Labor partner to manage the bulk of those folks. Through the UI, through the Wagner-Peiser, through the RICEA programs, we really have to count on them to carry this load, just because we can't possibly enroll enough people, walk-ins off the street to counterbalance that volume. So we were able to kind of negotiate down to last year or a smidge below last year's level. The state has accepted it, so and they're keenly aware of the fact that they're going to have to do the bulk on these things, because they just are. The only areas that I'm particularly nervous about are things here, which is our credential rates and our measurable skill. These two right here, measurable skills and credentials. Where these are going to come into effect and why I'm a little more nervous about them is these are really driven a lot and impacted a lot by people that are put into training, the numbers and the quality and the types of training that they're put into, and the data entry on the back end. So we do a lot of training on customized. There's a lot of volume as far as numbers of people there. We do a fair number of OJTs. We're doing more ITAs. So we're going to have to be very diligent with all of those folks and make sure that from a staffing perspective, they're putting in all of the proper data in the proper order, so the system is giving us credit for all the work that we're doing on those training funds. We've already started the training with the staff out in the field. We're going to continue monitoring it. But if we're going to have a problematic area that we can realistically impact anyways, it's going to be in these two here. Our hands were somewhat tied in that most of these were in that period of, or in that benchmarking period. So we didn't have a lot to negotiate on. but I'm pretty comfortable that we're going to give it the old college try on these. And I think we have a better than average chance of hitting them. So these are our measures. They're set now for the next 2 years. And now it's really operations and oversight. For those of you on that team, I will say you're going to be busy and you're going to see more attention around these and dedicated changes, particularly in the youth program, how we're exiting. Some of you have been around long enough to remember the days of hard exits and soft exits, and nobody gets exited without approvals and things of that nature. Some of those tried and true methodologies that we've used in the past are going to kind of circle back. They're going to be strategically put back in place to help us meet these measures. And I threw a lot at you, and it probably was somewhat confusing. So I'm anticipating questions and stuff on this topic, and I'd be happy to talk about it some more.
Questions for Dan?
Or I've confused you all to the point where you don't want to hear me talk anymore.
No, you are just comprehensive. Nothing wrong with that.
There you go. All right. So that's where we're at. Bottom line, I'm looking forward to it. Know that we're on top of it in terms of training and staff development. And I think we've got as much as can be anticipated in this pandemic world, I think we've got at least a reasonable shot at hitting them. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Looks like we need approval of that, Dan.
Yes, please.
Okay. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved. This is Nancy.
Nancy?
Second,
This
Jeannie.
is AJ.
Oh,
All right. We'll go with AJ. Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Last item are the lease approvals.
Yep. So we have 2 lease approvals up. This is the ProAction lease approval for our Bath Career Center. With all the square footage shared and whatnot, our total occupancy cost for that space for a year is about $9,900. That is, I want to guesstimate, and I can't remember the exact number, and Patty's not on here, but I think that's represents about a 40% increase. So there's been a pretty good jump in the cost. That being said, we get an entire career center with utilities and maintenance and everything for under $10,000 a year. So I still think it's a pretty good deal. And so I would certainly recommend the board accept that offer. The other lease is the Schuyler County sublease agreement from Montour Falls. And we get, every year we have increases on this one. And this is really, got to find where the numbers are on here. I'm zipping through this. I apologize. There we go. So we're up to $12.25 per square foot, or about $14,000 on that particular space in there. Again, that does include rent, utilities, a certain amount of maintenance, obviously the security services at the front door, etc. Still not all in all a bad deal for either of those. I'm not recommending that we not accept these and thus shut those career centers down. So I would recommend that we accept both of these lease agreements and execute.
I'll tell you, Ben County would have been nicer to you than Schuyler. They're tough.
Yes, Tim O'Hearn is a tough.
Yeah, yes. I get it. Okay. Any further questions? If not, could I get a motion, please?
So moved, Jack.
Ernie? Second?
This is Bruce. I'll second.
Bruce seconds. Okay, thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So Jack, I have one other piece of news that is not on the agenda, but I think the folks should know about before we hit adjournment.
Yes, sir.
All right. So just as an FYI, some of you will know the name Karen Coleman. She is a very high-ranking individual with the Department of Labor. We were notified a week ago that she is no longer going to be serving as the head of the dues, which is the branch of the Department of Labor that the local DOL employees report to. She has been moved out of her role there into rather abruptly into some sort of a policy making role with the governor's office. I'm not even sure what that means. We didn't get a lot of data on that. But for those of you that have been around for a while, you know that Karen Coleman has been in a ranking position since, wow, a long time, probably nearly as long as there's been either WIA or WIOA. So they have named her replacement. For the life of me right now, I'm terrible with names and it's not coming to me. But he comes out of Albany from the YM and YWCA world, and he's stepping into this role. So there will be significant changes to how, I'm anticipating significant changes to how local Department of Labor employees and expectations coming out of Albany related to how they interact with us and the world at large. We've been through a couple of these types of transitions in the past. In the early days, there's a lot of craziness going on because no one knows what the new expectations are. And so you get some wonky, goofy things at an individual level. But I'm anticipating probably over the next 4 to 6 months, beginning to see whatever the new vision is how Department of Labor employees at the local level are going to interact. So I am not mildly, I'm actually pretty hopeful. I think someone coming out of the YWYMCA world is going to be much more attuned to things like community building and interagency relations and things of that nature, versus someone maybe who's kind of been in a DOL only world for 30 years. So I'm a little more optimistic on that front, but time will tell. But some of the old assumptions that we've had in terms of how DOL operates locally could very well be changing over the next month or year. So just an FYI.
Okay, thank you. Items from the board before we move to adjourn. If not, could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Jamie, I'll move it.
Second from Jeannie.
Jamie and Jeannie. Okay, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Dan and staff.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.